It is a little bit like being parachuted in midway into the last season of Game of Thrones and going, who's the blue-eyed albino, Mr. Frosty? And why's the Queen a mardy bitch? And what's the score with those fucking dragons? Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of That's Audiophiles. My name's John. His name is Andy. I don't need no aggravation. I've just got to make you my occupation. More on that later. But first, we have a track to listen to. Andy, what do you got?
Well, we are coming up on the year end here, and I've got to get these guys in here because it feels like it's been a bit too long. But we are going to be revisiting a band that we've checked out, I think, 3 times on this channel prior to this, and I think 2 times on Into the Music, if I'm not mistaken. So this is Chartered Waters that you've been down before, but it's going to be another track from The Deer Hunter. And this track that I'm going to have you check out is called The Most Cursed of Hands / Who Am I? Kind of a 2-part song more than it really is 2 songs, but that distinction in the title there indicates where one stops and sort of the other part starts. So I'd really be interested to hear what you have to say about this. So please go off, give this thing a go, and let me know what you think, bud.
The devil went down to the river, and
They said where the devil went down to, my first thought was Georgia. But they repeated for 2 more times just to make sure I got the message. Thank you.
came to fall, to lose it all, to fool the fool too quick to call. While the gamblers.
Yeah, it's definitely, you got a real feeling of narrative here. Like that piano flourish is like, like the next chapter. And the placeholder, guitar strumming. Interesting. Something like the devil and the fool, and the gambler.
Stacks grew bigger. He lost his sight, narrowed eyes, too tempted by his right desires. Damned across faded paths, the time to fold had come to pass.
Reading up. So we also had this sort of intro, and there's something going on within the narrative. The gambler, I think the fool was mentioned, and I feel these are characters with capital letters. That's something to do with the card games going on here within the bigger narrative. So he's not dueling for a golden fiddle. With something else, I guess. nice transition into sort of like the song proper, as we call it. It has got a bit of that sort of folksy stroke country feel to it. And the voice is more urgent here, and when it's repeated twice more, yeah, you could easily like slip some banjos in here and no one would bat an eyelid. Yeah, sounds decent enough.
In the devil's wealth it withered. So with cunning class he offered fast to soul the wager had been cast.
Drums.
The gambler called, the river fell, and now the hand from out of hell.
Banjos.
Devil smiled, looked in his eyes. He knew the loss was glorified.
This is interesting. I have no idea what's going on narratively within the song, so it doesn't make any sense to me. But so we're getting this sort of games like jogging on the spot kind of. I don't know if he's thinking about stuff, and then his big flourish. When it comes out of the flourish, there's some really nice musically. Bass sounds great. There's that sort of wistful guitar chord. Sounds really nice. Just like a couple of seconds, but it sounds great. I have no idea why they're doing this, what dramatic purpose it means. Not at all. But it sounds quite nice. Pianos. That's nice there. Oh, I lean forward because the sound's coming from here, not from there. It's just habit. Yeah, so they were throwing the kitchen sink at that at the end. There was almost this like barroom sort of piano going on. It was really nice. And then some strings, and then even like some brass kind of affected brass-like noise harping away at the end as it fell down. Yeah, interesting.
Faded past, the hand he played.
So the sort of gentle vocals, the slow piano chords, and the strings. This, ladies and gentlemen, we have entered poignancy land. Please file Lordly Q to pick up your wistful regrets and belated insights.
Is last. Who am I?
Oh,
Who am I? Just a gambler holding aces in the devil's eyes.
now this is obviously the second song. Who am I? As he said it twice. It must be self-reflective on what's just happened. I'm not quite sure what's just happened. Game of cards with the devil. Oh my good God, what have I done? Musically though, it's really nice. It kind of puts me in mind of a it sounds like a deserted cafe at night, probably French. And two people are dancing. Chairs are stacked on the table, smoke still going from the extinguished candle wicks. Yeah, it has that sort of smoky intrigue with a dib dab of danger. I don't know what it says about me, but I could connect this part of the music much more instantly than the other stuff. There you go. Yeah, sounds great. And I love the bass and the sort of stabbing keys that punctuate. Like, it's not quite a waltz kind of feel to it because it's 4-time rather than 3-time, but that kind, we're in that area. I don't know, slow tango or whatever. I'm not an expert on these dances, but it does feel like that. Yeah, it's very moody.
What is wrong? What's the sin?
Sorry, just to say, it does kind of feel French to me. You can slip an accordion here and nobody will notice.
Where's the answer? Where the hell do I fit in? Or could it be there's just a little demon lost in the debris? And should idly bide my time until the wager releases me? It can't remain unknown.
Tune in next week to find out what happens. Yeah, this was interesting. To be honest with you, I struggled to sort of connect with what was going on in the first 3/4 of the song. There were bits and pieces that I definitely enjoyed. It wasn't, terrible to listen to, but overall, I felt disconnected from it. Like you've been dropped into some narrative, and you don't know what hell's going on. And it was quite bitty in the way it jumped from bit to bit, which I know several people love that. Oh, where's the change up? Where's the change up? I don't give a crap about change up. Am I enjoying this? Yes. I'll keep listening to it until I stop enjoying it. But yeah, that's the difference, I guess. So yeah, it was all right. I much preferred the final quarter of the song. Instantly, and I'm sure this is all the wrong pictures, but it put pictures in my head. So yeah, in that way, I've connected with it much better. So yeah, interesting. And I know this is part of one of their massive narratives, I should imagine. So Andy can explain it all to us. So let's get back and chop it up with him.
All right, so it looks like you returned from this high stakes game of poker that I sent you to go off to listen to. The intro really quickly before we get into it, I think it's probably to you obvious why I chose this song now because we had just recently discussed this trope of in music, especially from Robert Johnson on forward, of this idea of a battle with the devil between the narrator for this, that, or the other thing. So when we got into that conversation, this song was flashing around in my gray matter, so I wanted to bring it to the channel. So please tell us what you thought, John.
Yeah. Okay. So first thoughts is the most cursed of hands. I immediately thought of Dead Man's Hand. Two black aces, two black eights, as held by Wild Bill Hickok when he was shot to death
Yeah,
in Deadwood. Yeah.
such a great show.
It's such a great show. Anyway, so it opens with this immediate narrative feel. There's some synth chords that feels like the parting of theatre curtains, and then this sort of placeholder guitar. As the singer begins, the devil went down to, my mind immediately thought Georgia, and a fiddle duo, but no, obviously not. And the backing vocals reinforced River twice more to make sure I got the message. Um, um, so there's the mention of the devil, obviously, at the start, and then the fool and the gambler. And I'm wondering if these are capital letter characters, a veritable cast of tarot cards, perhaps. We get another line ending three bags full with a double repeat of bigger, bigger, bigger. And it gives it that sort of touch of almost like a folksy country feel to it. You could slip some banjos in here without anyone noticing. As we're going along, the guitar almost runs out of juice and it slows down, and then it gets to those, it's catching its breath, it gets replaced by this arpeggioed chord of a different sounding guitar that stretches over the next couple of lines. The lyrics are really heavy with intent. The certain phrases, rider's eyes and fated path, which is building, or rather building on, some sort of mythology that already exists within this world. I know enough about Deer Hunter, not always, but I think this sort of like acts something or other on it as well.
Yes.
So this is definitely part. So this clearly conveys a point mid-narrative, a larger story. It is a little bit like being parachuted in midway into the last season of Game of Thrones and going, who's the blue-eyed albino, Mr. Frosty? And why's the Queen a mardy bitch? And what's the score of those fucking dragons? And I felt a little bit like that. But, so lyrics aside, though, I'm just treating them as sound objects, really, is the music. At 1:10-ish, a drum beat sneaks in with, shoes off. And it starts to up the ante. It speeds up as well and gets louder, and then we break out sort of like 15 seconds later into an up-tempo section of the song. And the voices here are seasoned with a dash of vim and a splash of vigor, as are the accompanying instruments, particularly the guitar, which seems to have gone all the way through puberty in a matter of seconds, sprouting hair and gruff voices all over the shop. So yeah, there's a lot more sort of action to it. The end of the line, the twice repeated delivered, now has more of a triumphant ring to it. And there is some sort of almost like pomp to this feel of this section. I have absolutely no idea what's going on in the narrative, but I don't think it involves a fiddle of gold. The percussion here starts to signpost the narrative. There's a big cymbal splash that heralds the word devil. And then after three times withered, you get some really tasty toms in the next line. And then it starts to fill out more and more beats, the drummer. Then we go to a section where there's some drama amongst the minor chords, as I think the devil loses it on the river. So it must be Texas Hold'em. It's funny how people don't mention the flop in lyrics. It doesn't sound as pleasing as the record, does it?
No.
You know, I bet my guts on the flop. I mean, it just doesn't really scan as well. I'm just thinking how funny that, and again, like stud poker's really boring, so it never really features in songs either. um, just as we get to something about the devil losing, I hear bloody banjos. So I do
I was
wonder for a
waiting
second.
for the epiphany of the banjo to arrive when you had mentioned earlier they could almost use banjos in this.
Yeah, I wondered if I'd manifested them myself and I considered playing the lottery later. Um, so then we get to this little dramatic lull, bit of thinking time, as the guitar and the drums sort of pace around. And it's punctuated by these dramatic flourishes of keyboard and guitar and snare drum, and then followed by oohs. And it's a really weird section because honestly, without the narrative at all, I do not know why they're doing this. Um, I thought for half a second it's supposed to represent the cards turning over, perhaps. I don't know, but they're really it's a strange little section. I can't for the life of me figure out why they're doing it. There's not to say it's not interesting. And when they have the flourishes, when it comes back, there's a little like 1-2 second bit with this like really lovely guitar chord, and it sounds a bit almost Pink Floydy. Really nice, and they get the ooze as well from the vocals as well. And then it goes to the next section. So at 3:30, we get this glam guitar sound, Goose stepping in, and the drums and even the banjos pick up the sort of like the fascist sort of tones. Again, it made me think of Pink Floyd and the hammers in the wall, for some reason. It doesn't sound anything like that, but it just made me think of that. And here the vocal lines are delivered over an extended version of that previous flourish that was in between the quiet bits. They sort of extend that out and it adds to the drama. I think at one point I think I hear like a barroom piano joining in.
Yeah.
And it really makes a strange noise, but really interesting. And there's all manner of effects. And the strings come in, and then at one point, as it all comes tumbling down, we get the sound or a replication of the sound of brass sound sort of popping out as the song descends via elevator down, and then the doors open on the poignancy floor, usually reserved for reflecting on loss or revelation of feelings all too late. So it's this classic sort of gentle piano and these synth, I guess, strings or rail strings that match a gentle vocal as we stop and think about what's happened here. This segues with a rat-a-tat-tat to 5:10 into the second serving, which is, of course, this other song. And I'm wondering why they're doing this. So, Who Am I? I mean, the title, it's not the famous song by The Who. Obviously, the title you would think assumes it's about self-reflection. And indeed, the title line is repeated as the protagonist sort of wrings his existential hands. However, the music to this, and it's just me, it clearly is just me, it put me in mind of a complete scenario setting. It is a late night, deserted cafe, chairs stacked on the tables, extinguished candles, wicks still smoking in their wine bottle holders, and two people dancing on a very dimly lit floor. And that's exactly what I could picture from the music. And it wasn't quite wasn't a waltz, because that's 3-time. This is 4-time, but it's something a lot. I don't know enough about Strictly Dancing to tell you what it was.
Right.
Definitely wasn't a cha-cha-cha. But anyway, really, really nice. The bass is sort of resonant, and the stabbing keyboards are like details, like the flick of an arm or the kick of a leg. And I can still picture one of the dancers is still wearing an apron, but I'm not sure which one. And I'm thinking you could easily sneak an accordion in here. So yeah, there's this mood of smoky betrayal or danger, and the cymbal splashes. And then for a millisecond, I think I'm truly clairvoyant, but no, it's not an accordion, it's the strings going in. for that for like that much time. It's like,
If I can do it once on a banjo, I can do it again.
yeah, exactly. And then the strings and it flourishes, and then there's this strange hey, which is like this group. It almost sounds like all of them putting their hands up at once
Mm.
before the final line, and then we end on this very sort of plaintive chord. So yeah, a poker game with the devil, etc. Not quite sure what he won or whatever, but so lyrics aside, I thought musically it's all very interesting. There's nothing I didn't like, but I would say that the second song or the final quarter, I immediately connected with straight away. I found it more easier to hang on to and digest. And then there were bits and pieces in the other ones, definitely, but as a whole, it was that sort of who am I that I felt easily latched onto. But overall, yeah, it's enjoyable and very interesting. And haven't got a clue what's going on.
Fair. I'll try to fill you in as much as I can without getting too bogged down in this now 5-act tale that's been told over 5 albums.
Yeah, yeah.
A sixth of which may or may not be in the works. But yeah, I mean, for obvious reasons, I chose this as I explained before we got into it. So I'm glad that you could give it a go and, make that connection pretty easily, I'm sure. And again, we've covered the Deer Hunter here on the channel before, so I'm not going to get bogged down in rehashing their biographical information, but I will post a playlist down in the description field below devoted to the songs that we have done by these guys. So if you have any interest in learning more, please go back and check out any of those episodes. This track features on their 2016 album, Act 5, Hymns with the Devil in Confessional. Which is, as the name suggests, in part is part of the band's epic multi-part act concept collection, as we've talked about. And this was the last album released as part of this concept collection. There are rumors abound that there will be an Act 6 in the works titled The Hanged Man. But it's currently on indefinite hold, according to lead singer and the band's main songwriter, Casey Crescenzo. Go ahead, John.
Yes, I remembered his name was Casey. Again, the hangman, it's very tarot card, isn't it?
That is a running theme throughout a lot of these acts. There is another later track called The King of Swords Reversed, another tarot card. So tarot cards tend to make an appearance throughout this tale, and is definitely they're used as symbols for the development of the titular character, especially, but also some of the other characters as well. So another interesting little bit to this very convoluted and condensed story that Crescenzo tells over all these albums. So the Deer Hunters Act series tells the life story of a central protagonist, the boy, later known as Hunter, from his birth to old age, focusing on his flight from a troubled past with a prostitute mother, growing up in a brothel, through tragic love with this misleading character, who's his love interest of questionable repute and morals. Also, his trials through war in World War I, and a descent into addiction and crime in a corrupt city, grappling with fate, morality, and a cyclical nature of mistakes, blending personal drama with grand, quite operatic themes. It's a multi-album rock opera exploring themes of innocence, loss, betrayal, revenge, and redemption, using symbolism and diverse musical styles. I think this song in and of itself is a perfect microcosm for all the different sounds and genres that they pull from, and somehow seem to make work without it feeling too wanky and over the top. So kudos to Crescenzo for being able to toe that line. The band's lineup on this album consisted of the aforementioned Casey Crescenzo, lead vocals, piano, guitar, Rhodes organ, synth, and auxiliary percussions, as well as just the brain behind all of it. His brother Nick Crescenzo on drums, percussion, and backing vocals, Rob Parr on guitar, acoustic guitar, vocals, piano, and organ, Nick Solicito, bass guitar, backing vocals, Max Tussaud on guitar, synth, percussion, backing vocals, and Gavin Castleton, piano, co-lead vocals, synth, and programming. And additional featured musicians on this album include Tivoli Breckenridge and Judy Crescenzo, who provided vocals. I think Judy's his sister. Phil Crescenzo on banjo. I don't know. Maybe father. I'm not 100% sure. Brass woodwind section was Brad Clayla on trombone, Chris Gagnon on alto and tenor sax, Ben Schall on baritone sax, and Manny Mendez on trumpet. The 15-track album was released on September 9th of 2016 through it was released through Cave and Canary, Goods, and Equal Vision Records. Pop Matters rated the album 9 out of 10 stars, while AllMusic rated it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Over at Sputnik Music, the album has been reviewed by 760 different users and sits at an aggregate score of 4.3 out of 5, which earns the site's superb designation. And Rachel Mann of Louder Sound reviewed the album and wrote, "As its subtitle suggests, Hymns with the Devil in Confessional exposes the story's hero to some of the dark consequences of Act 4. And I believe we did the line here, and the line is where he's at war and his brother dies whilst at war, and he sort of takes on his identity and goes back home to sort of graduate to a higher living status. So this is, and that's not a great choice to make. So this is like all the evils and stuff that comes as a consequence of the line, having crossed it, and it being the end of who he was and who his brother was, too. So, yeah, this dramatic turn gives stylistic scope to Crescenzo's magpie brilliance. Hymns contains a bewildering profusion of styles from proggy chamber pop through to blues, dance jazz, alt folk, and a growing confidence with classical arrangements. It's a melodic, hook-rich tour de force. As the penultimate album, is Hymns only for the hardcore fans? Far from it. It's a mark of Crescenzo's impressive growth as an artist that his work remains vibrant, open, at times utterly exquisite, and always fascinating. The folks at Trebuchet magazine also reviewed the album and wrote, "From the opening moments of the first track, this rock opera of sorts rings out with that classic prog rock sound of the likes of Yes. The warm feel from the sound, gentle and caressing with its sonic touch, is gentle but expressive enough to slowly build the world this album details around you. The use of traditional stringed instruments and horns helps give a grandiose feel. Given the time in which the story is set, they fit rather well, combining with subtle but piercing synths and crisp distortion when the situation calls for a heavier and more ferocious approach. It really stands out. This use of dynamics and complementary sounds really helps augment situations in the lyrics which detail a tense situation. A clear example of this is The Most Cursed of Hands. In the early stages of the album, there were wave-like peaks and troughs of musical intensity, and dramatics are on show throughout the track." Adding, "The variety of styles on display is vast too. Ballads, creative instrumental sections, raw rock, and period stylings, in this case, jazz, blues, and the old ragtime, help create a wide and attention-holding sound, something which, when combined with the vocal delivery and the musical performance, is essential for keeping a listener engaged in such a complex and gripping story." And finally, Andrew Howie of the Pop Break rated the album a 9 out of 10 and would write, "The Deer Hunter is one of the most intriguing groups around right now. Formed by multi-instrumentalist Casey Crescenzo, formerly of the receiving end of Sirens, their music is a compendium of masterfully composed symphonic music, heavily focused on storytelling and dramatics. This does not mean it is all classical, as Crescenzo's tightly constructed songwriting leaps and bounds through an industrial, gypsy folk, vaudeville, horror soundtrack, progressive rock, a cappella, and more, all underneath his insane vocal range, often layered in 5-part harmony and the occasional jazz break. Adding, the number of tracks may deter the casual listener too, making them wonder if this is a Cliff's Note track listing or playlist, which can give them the basics of the story. The musical delivery, too, whilst executed to a high standard, may not be everyone's preferred progressive rock delivery, myself included, so saith the author. These folks may be put off by the slower and more restrained feel throughout the album instead of the raw rock of other bands of the Milieu, Kansas, Rush, etc. Still, positives and negatives aside, and looking at this from a purely musical aspect, you can only ask one question of the Deer Hunter, or perhaps eavesdrop the answer at the titular confession to the devil. How did he create a well-polished album which can be listened to on a purely musical basis and still not hinder the story he has been crafting for years? Which, to some extent, kind of speaks to your experience in this, where you're like, despite not knowing the story, you were still able to like really enjoy the music that was going on here. So yeah, let's get into this narrative a little bit and jump into these lyrics. The devil went down to the river, and he came to fall, to lose it all, to fool the fool too quick to call. While the gambler's stack grew bigger, he lost his sights through narrowed eyes, too tempted by his wry desires. Damned across faded paths, the time to fold had come to pass. With the gambler's glory delivered, he had the thirst for more, a bigger score, a trophy no one could ignore. And the devil's wealth had withered, so with cunning class he offered fast his soul. The wager had been cast. The gambler called, the river fell, and now the hand from out of hell. The devil smiled, looked in his eyes. He knew the loss was glorified. Hey, the devil said, revel in your victory. You've earned your damning. Pack your things and leave. But the gambler only stood and stuttered, stammering on words of disbelief. Now you've won a new vocation. Pray to me that you can stand the heat. And that, the gambler saw, meant he had gone and finally set the devil free. Damned across faded paths, the hand he played would be his last. Who am I? Who am I? Just a gambler holding aces in the devil's eyes. What is wrong? What's the sin? What's the answer? Where the hell do I fit in? Or could it be there's just a little demon lost in the debris, and I should idly bide my time until a wager releases me? Hey, it can remain unknown. So, the most cursed of hands, / who am I, tells the Faustian tale of a gambler making a deal with the devil, symbolizing the boys, hunters, descent into destructive choices, after winning ultimately means losing his soul and identity, with musical motifs tying back to earlier acts themes of war, family, and inner conflict. The cursed hand isn't just bad luck, it's the very tool of temptation and destruction he wields, leading to a damnation and a fractured sense of self. Thus, who am I? So, yeah, there we are, and there is our main character from the Axe album in this current state, having just bested the devil, but losing his soul in the process, which is usually not how it goes. You have to lose to the devil in order to lose your soul. But I think in a way he becomes the devil, and takes on that role, which in a way, I mean, is you've sacrificed yourself, thus your soul, to become this new, more evil iteration. So yeah, interesting song. I think the music and the way it's composed and arranged is fucking brilliant in this song, and I think is a really good example of what he does throughout all these acts, that are definitely worth checking out. Even if the storyline isn't of any interest, the music is enough for one to go off and give this a listen, at least in my humble opinion. So really glad you gave this one a go, John, and that you enjoyed all the different things that were happening here, and it wasn't too proggily jarring for you, which sometimes can happen with prog, I understand. But yeah, thanks so much for giving this a go, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. No problem, sir.
Excellent. Well, guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of this track, The Most Cursed of Hands / Who Am I by The Deer Hunter off their Act 5 album. If you guys have any other suggestions by them or any other bands out there, please feel free to shout them down in the comments field below. We will add them to our ever-growing list for our Friday episodes. Also, please like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. Doesn't cost you much but a couple seconds of your time, and we really do appreciate it. So thank you so much. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. And happy holidays out there, guys. See you later.